Hey guys, what's up? It's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about nursing and basically the transition from being a nursing student to being an actual nurse. So if you haven't been here before, like I said, hi, my name's Amanda. I am a postpartum nurse. I have officially, nope, not officially yet. I have almost been working as a nurse for 1 year. It'll be a year on July 8th, I believe. I feel like I'm starting to finally feel comfortable in nursing and not feeling like a new nurse. Like, I still feel like a new nurse sometimes, but I'm definitely starting to feel more confident in everything. So I thought I would kind of just walk you through what my orientation was like as a nurse, as a new nurse, and talk over the residency program that I did, give you guys some advice on like when you're starting orientation and when you are a new nurse and stuff. And then I also have some Q&A questions that you guys sent me on Instagram. So let's hop right into that. First, I'm going to kind of talk you through my nursing background a little bit, because I've definitely talked about it plenty on my channel, and then go into like my orientation. So if you don't know, I did an accelerated nursing program. So I did a 12-month nursing program. I already had a bachelor's degree, so my nursing school in general was a little bit different than the average person. So I graduated last May. And then I just took the NCLEX, whatever. I have my whole NCLEX journey and stuff on my channel as well. And then I started working in July. My first day was a hospital-wide orientation, and the rest of the week was like nursing orientation for all nurses that were starting. And I think CNAs were involved in that as well. And they talked about nursing specific things and the EPIC and a bunch of stuff that was relevant, but also kind of not relevant. And then my orientation was 12 weeks long, so most of the time I was working day shift and orienting on day shift, and then every once in a while I had some specific classes that were related to OB postpartum. So we had one about antepartum, one about postpartum, one about newborn. We had a few other ones like built into our schedule, and so I was having those along with my day shift orientation. And then my last like 2 weeks of orientation was when I switched over to doing night shift orientation, and I only work nights now, and my position was always night shift. So switching over into night shift was kind of when I like really started to feel like I was kind of getting what I needed to do, and there's a lot more time to sit down with my preceptors and go through stuff. So I'm gonna kind of back up and talk about like my first few shifts on the unit and what I did. And I feel like it's really important to kind of have a plan in place of like what goals you want to have for yourself going through orientation, or if your managers or anything have any goals for you. My managers in the clinical nurse educator unit, we kind of like met every other week, if not every 3 weeks, just to kind of go through like, where am I at, how am I feeling, what have I done, what do I still need to do, what do I need practice on, and stuff like that. And they had like a really nice layout of like, by this date you should be able to do this date you should be able to do this. So it was like the first like week was basically just like learning where things were in the hospital and getting down like assessments and vitals, and that was pretty much what my first week was just kind of getting things under my belt. And for the first like week or two, my preceptor was pretty much always with me doing things. And then we started getting into the tasky things like baths and vaccines and blood sugars on babies. And so as I went through it, we kind of like, the acuity of the patients kind of increased. So obviously this is like relevant to someone who's going to be working on postpartum, who are like on a med surg or pretty much any other unit. It's obviously going to be a little bit different, so like take everything I'm saying but like kind of morph it into what works for your unit and where you're going to be, because obviously you're not going to have newborns that you're taking care of, hopefully, unless that's like what you're supposed to be doing. I definitely was very skittish and afraid on my first like month or two of orientation, and like I didn't really want to do anything on my own. And like I said, once I switched over into night shift, my preceptor did a really good job of like kind of pushing me out of my comfort zone and being like, okay, you're gonna go do this, you're gonna go do their whole assessment and get baby's weight and do this and this, and then you're gonna come back, you're gonna tell me how it went, tell me what we did. And I really appreciated that, and I think that it happened at the perfect point for me, but some people might want it to happen sooner for them, and some people might not want it to happen at all. But I'm very glad that that worked out the way that it did, if that makes sense. Like I said, 12 weeks of orientation, and then I was on my own, and my first few shifts on my own went pretty smoothly. I definitely vlogged them when it happened, so I will kind of post that up here for you guys to check out. I remember my first shift on my own, I started with 1 couplet, and I was like getting an admission, and then I was like open for another admission towards the end of the night. And I'm glad that it happened that way. I feel like a lot of people that might be very overwhelming to, but like that way I only had 1 couplet to focus on at the beginning. And yeah, having 2 admissions kind of sucks, but then it ended up working out really nicely, and it definitely was just helpful to kind of slowly go into having more responsibility. So next I want to kind of talk about the nurse residency program. So I had a few questions about nurse residency programs and like applying for jobs with nurse residency programs. So my work has one, but it's not as intensive as other hospitals. My nurse residency program didn't actually start until about almost 6 months after I was like had started, so I was probably off orientation for 3 months. And I'm kind of glad that that's how it happened, because I feel like if I would have had nurse residency right when I started, I would have been like, I feel like it would have just been kind of a different situation. So the nurse residency program was for new grads only. Their reasoning behind having it so far after you're like off orientation is like, by that point is when you're finally like on your own, you're getting things down, and then you're gonna have more relevant questions that are not just to like the basics of your job. And it was a lot more based on like, okay, now you've been doing this for a little bit, how can you become even more confident in what you're doing? And like talking us through like the levels of nursing and being like novice and new, and like going through that, and like how it takes like years to become confident in what you're doing. So my residency was every other week, and we had various topics that we talked about. A lot of them personally were not applicable to someone working in postpartum. Like we had a day where for like 3 hours we talked about death and dying and like older people, and as you can probably tell, that's not really relevant to my situation. I mean, obviously we have some like fetal demises, but that's like a whole different ball game than people who are on hospice, you know? So anyway, overall the residency was like pretty helpful. Unfortunately it did get cut like 2 weeks short, or like 2 sessions short, because COVID happened and we couldn't meet, and you know, COVID just throwing a wrench in everything. But anyway, so the nurse residency program was pretty, for the most part, helpful, and definitely was nice to just sit and talk to new grads and be like, oh, you don't feel comfortable? Okay, good, I don't feel comfortable. Like we're all scared out of our minds 75% of the time that we're at work. So like it just kind of made me feel better and validated my feelings. All right, so next I'm gonna kind of move into the Q&A, and then I'm gonna end with the advice that I have for you guys. So I asked you guys to ask me questions on Instagram. Make sure you guys are following me on Instagram, because I do this a lot and I ask for input on videos and stuff. And if you want some input, go follow me. First one is, when did you start applying / looking for jobs, and did I do a nurse residency program? So I started applying to jobs probably in like January or February before I had graduated. So like a few months before I started graduating, and I actually had applied to a nurse residency program like in like November of before I graduated. So you're definitely gonna have to look into, if you want to do a nurse residency program, some of them like are pretty competitive for like application wise, so you might want to just check in on those and see when the applications are due, because it might be a little bit weird, because I know there was a very extensive interviewing process for that one. I didn't pick my hospital that I work at because it had a nurse residency program. I picked it because it was a job that I would enjoy, and then it just happened to have a nurse residency program. And I honestly feel like I don't think it would be any different if I hadn't had a hospital with a nurse residency program. I know that a lot of people really recommend it. For me personally, I feel like my unit did a really good job of like making sure that I felt good and comfortable about things. And then with like applying and looking into jobs, I wouldn't apply too far out, and I know things are weird now with COVID, But I would say start looking around like 3 or 4 months before you start graduating, like learn what's out there. If there's a job opening for a position on a floor that you really want to work on, apply to it. Like, the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say, no, sorry, we're hiring someone else who can start sooner. And then kind of related to that is another question: is mom and baby hard to get into as a new grad? I don't think it is. I feel like we have a lot of new grads who work on our unit. A lot of people I know who started there as a new grad. I think labor and delivery might be a little more difficult, but at the same time, we have new grads who work in labor and delivery and stuff too. We have a lot of colleges in the area that have nursing programs, so I feel like that's a big part of it. When I started, our birthing center was expanding, so there was a lot of openings in a lot of different positions when I applied, so I'm very thankful for that. I think right now we don't have any open jobs, but we're also at a hiring freeze because, again, COVID. So I would say it depends on your area and depends on the birthing center. Next question is hardest part of the transition. I think the hardest part of the transition is like having to make decisions for yourself, like in the moment. Like, for example, when I first started, like taking a baby's blood sugar, if it was low, my heart would have dropped. I would have been very nervous. I'd be like, oh my god, okay, so now I have to do this, and I don't remember what to do next. And like, I was very like nervous about everything I did. And now when I go into a room, if I have to like do baby blood sugar, I do the blood sugar, and if it's low, I'm like, okay, I gotta do this and this and this, and like, I know what I'm doing. And I feel like that was the hardest thing, is like just kind of remembering everything that you have to do, but like being confident. And like, I can't show that I'm nervous that this baby has a low blood sugar because it's gonna freak the parents out. And I feel like just maintaining your composure and realizing that you're the one making the decisions. I feel like that was like the hardest and scariest thing, is like, oh my god, like this is all me. It's all me. I don't have someone in the room with me who can help me make decisions. And like, obviously if you need help with something, ask, but like if it's like just a general, you know, I don't know if that makes sense. Next question is how to organize and gain confidence. So I do have a separate video about like kind of walking through my shift and like how I organize my shift and everything like that, so make sure you guys check that out. And gaining confidence kind of just comes with doing things. Like, the more you do it, the more you work. Like, every day that I work, I feel like I feel more confident in my abilities and what I'm doing. So just kind of going out there and doing it, and that's all you can do. Like, it doesn't just magically happen. You gotta work for it. Tips for coming off orientation and being on your own. I would say that my biggest advice for you is to use your coworkers. They are there to help you. They want you to succeed. They want you to do well. They're not gonna like laugh at you and watch you struggle. Like, I hope not, at least. And if they are, then you really need to talk to your manager or something, because that's not okay. My coworkers were absolutely amazing. When I first came off orientation, they literally asked me every minute of every day, like, do you need help with something? How are you doing? Do you need anything? Do you need anything? And like, now that I'm like been off orientation for a while, when there's nurses that come on and they're like on their first or second day off orientation, I make sure that I go out of my way to be like, hey, how are you doing? Do you need help with anything? Is there anything I can do for you? And even if I see another like co-worker struggling with something, like, I feel like I really lucked out on my unit, and everyone is so helpful, and everyone looks out for each other and helps each other, and like doesn't hesitate to ask for help and doesn't hesitate to offer help. And I feel like that's very important, and having a good connection with your coworkers, and I feel like that just makes everything so much easier. So don't hesitate to ask for help if you need it, and ask questions if you have questions. Another question is, what are the best ways of coping with the workload? Kind of the same thing. Asking for help if you need it, not being afraid to ask for help. If you feel like you were given like an unfair assignment, don't be afraid to like go to the charge nurse and be like, hey, just so you know, this was a really tough group. Maybe for the next shift, mix these people up a little bit, because like obviously in the moment there's nothing that can be done for you, but at least like looking out for the next nurse. And obviously, I mean, on my unit, the charge nurse does not have patients. On yours, they might. So like asking the charge nurse for help as well. Next question, is charting the most important thing as a postpartum nurse? I would say that, I mean, charting is very important. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, like, if you didn't chart it, you didn't do it. If you're like ever in court for something as a nurse, I don't know, hopefully you never will be, but like, they can go back on your charting. They can go back and look at your charting. If you say, oh, I went in at this time and did their vitals and it was this, this, and this, if you didn't chart it, it never happened. Like, there's no way to prove it. There's no way to prove it unless you charted it at that time. So if you didn't chart it, you didn't do it. So yes, it's important. Does it suck? Totally. But you have to do it. And that's something that that'll just come with time. Is just like, I can chart my assessments and stuff so quickly now because I'm just used to doing it. But again, all this stuff comes with time and you'll be okay, I promise. And next question, how do you negotiate salary as a new nurse? Is that even an option? I would say as a brand new nurse, you're not gonna have a ton of room for negotiation. A lot of hospitals have like a starting rate that they start their new nurses at. We are unionized, so everyone starts at a certain rate, and then like the more years you have of experience, the more money you can get. So I did not have any room for negotiation. And the last question, how did you go from having someone watching and correcting you to being on your own? I feel like having someone watching and correcting me, I almost didn't like it. Like once I was onto my part of orientation where someone was like not with me 24/7, I feel like I was finally able to like get into my own groove of things and like learn how I want to go through my assessment, because everyone does something different. And that's the nice thing about preceptors, is like I would recommend like having like 2 or 3 main preceptors that you work with, because like you can take a little piece from this person, a little piece from this person, but at the end of the day you're gonna kind of come up with your own way of doing a shift, and don't feel like you have to do it the same as everyone else. Like you have to like hit the main points, but like you gotta do what works for you. Now I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of advice. So first of all, I want to say that it is totally, completely normal for you to feel scared and for you to feel overwhelmed and like you have no idea what you're doing and feel like questioning if this was the right career for you and stuff like that. Like that is so normal, and I can't stress that enough, that like if you feel that way, that's normal. It's okay. It takes a long time to feel confident in what you're doing. I feel like in the past like 2 months is when I have started to finally feel confident in like 99% of the shifts I do. Like obviously if something comes up that I haven't ever dealt with before, like that's scary, and I do my best to like try and remain calm, ask questions, use my resources, use my coworkers, and like hope for the best, because that's all I can do. Like if I'm put in a situation that I've never dealt with before, I have to learn how to adapt to that. And don't be afraid to ask questions. That's like my biggest piece of advice. Like it doesn't make you look stupid, it honestly makes you look smarter, because you're asking about things that like if you don't know, don't just guess, ask. That's what your preceptor's there for. They're not gonna judge you, I promise. And I also want to like along with that say is like it's okay to not know everything. Like you're never gonna know everything. I don't know everything. That's why they have online resources and they have like cards in the rooms and stuff. It's like there's stuff that's gonna happen that doesn't happen regularly, and those are the things that you're not expected to know how to react like instantaneously. Like it's gonna take a second. It's okay. That's like that's my biggest piece of advice, is it's okay. You'll get through this. You're gonna be a kick-ass nurse. You're gonna be awesome. You graduated school, you passed the NCLEX. This is just another hurdle in your way. So yeah, I hope that was like helpful to kind of walk you through my orientation and everything. I can't believe that I've already been doing this for a year. Sometimes it feels like I've been doing it for way longer. Sometimes it feels like I just started. I think I've talked about this before, but there's a book called Oh Shit, I Almost Killed You. It's by Nurse Sonia or something like that, and I read that right before I started, and I feel like in the book she talks about being a new nurse and stuff like that, and I think it was really helpful to be like hearing from someone who has been a nurse for years and years that like when they started they were scared, and that's okay. That's going to be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss any more videos. Make sure you follow me on Instagram so you don't miss any more Q&As that I do, or feel free to message me on there if you have any other questions, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.